In Jesus' teachings, he used parables. And most of the people normally ask themselves, what are parables? Why did Jesus use the parable? And what are the examples of parables? So today I want us to understand what is the meaning of the word parable. So a parable is a short and simple story that teach a religious or moral lesson. It is a short story, but it teaches about a religious or moral lesson. And also you can say a parable, it is a short story with a hidden meaning. When I talk about hidden meaning, it means that you must be keen for you to understand the meaning of a parable. And Jesus used several parables. The common one is the parable of the Good Samaritan, whereby Jesus wanted to teach about love. Another parable is the parable of the prodigal son. Why? Jesus also wanted to teach about love, teach about accepting the lost one. The parable of the prodigal son. We also have the parable of the sower, whereby he wanted to teach about those people who get the word and then put it into action, but others, they just listen and then it pass away. So when Jesus decided to teach in parable, he wanted to separate between the full believers and the pretenders, because even in church, when you have you have a group of people in church, we have those people who are serious with the word, but others have just come there to pass the time. So when you are a leader, a religious leader, you are a pastor, you have been invited somewhere to teach or to teach about something, it is good to use parables. It is good to have your own, to be creative, to come up with stories which that will help to separate between the true believers, the true believers. You can follow the example of Jesus, because Jesus in every teaching, he gave out a story, and this story we call it a parable. And we have said a parable, it is a story with a hidden meaning. So why did Jesus talk in parable? Why? And parable in Kiswahili ni mafumbo. So why did Jesus teach in parable, or talk in parable? Because he could just go direct to the point, but he used parables. The first reason is that parable confirm who are true hearers and who aren't. The true hearer, wale watu ambao wako serious na kusikia ile ujumbe, are the true hearer. So when Jesus used parable, wale ambao hawakuwa serious, those who came just to see him, others they just came to see because they heard that Jesus did some miracle, so they came to see who is this Jesus. But others came to listen and then to follow whatever Jesus was teaching. So the parable used to separate the full hearer, to illustrate the parable confirm who are true hearers and who are not true, wale watu ambao walikuwa wanamfuata kwa haki na ukweli, lakini wengine walikuwa wanamfuata tu kuona ile miujiza ambayo anafanya. Wengine labda alisikia mahali Yesu amefanya hii, so they just came to do what? To pass time. And then to illustrate his meaning, Jesus used a parable to illustrate the meaning. Like for example, the parable of the Good Samaritan. When Jesus was talking, when Jesus talked about the parable of the Good Samaritan, so he was teaching about love. So akiillustrate the meaning, anatumia mafumbo, anatumia parable. So when you listen at the story of the prodigal son, then you will get the full meaning of love, what somebody should do for him or her to show love to other people. Number 3, parable confirm prophecy. In the Old Testament, there were some of the prophets who prophesied that the Messiah to come will talk in parables. So when Jesus taught in parable, most of the people, they were able to understand. Why? Because this was prophesied by the early prophets in the Old Testament. Parables cross culture and generation. You see, when we talk about the parable crossing the culture and generation, inamaanisha ya kwamba, like when he uses parable, you get that he is able to touch the all culture, the all tribes, the all regions. So hakuna ile region ambayo ingesema sisi tumebaguliwa. That's why he used the parable. And then the last one, parable helps listeners to get illustrated center to the story. Inafanya the story becomes interesting, so it makes the listener to have that interest to enter into the story. Na vile anaingia into the story, it makes this person to understand better. So I like to ask the religious leaders, let us be creative, come up with stories as you teach in the synagogue, in churches. Let us try to have interesting stories, because parables of Jesus, they were more and more interesting. Zilikuwa zinafanya mtu anasikiza kwa umakini, na ya kwamba wakati mtu amesikia haya mafumbo, utapata he comes up with a decision, anakuja na uamuzi. And when I talked about it has a hidden meaning, tunakumbuka ile parable of the sower. Akasema mwenye masikio na asikie. But the disciple of Jesus asked Jesus that what does this mean? Lakini akamwambia, nyinyi mmekwisha kuwa na ufahamu, lakini kuna wale ambao hawana ufahamu, ni lazima nitumie mafumbo. So Jesus used the parable to separate the true believers, wale ambao walikuwa wa ukweli, wafuasi wa ukweli. So utapata kama mtu hakuwa serious, mwingine labda hakuwa anamaanisha whatever he was doing, utapata ya kwamba wengine wata give up, hawataendelea kumsikiza. Zitakuwa kama ni hadithi ambazo hazina maana. Lakini kwa yule mtu ambaye ako keen ya kwamba he could listen to the teaching of Jesus through parables, na abadilike. So that's why Jesus decided to use parables, And we have said a parable is a story with a hidden meaning. Yani unapewa hadithi, lakini katika hiyo hadithi ambayo umepewa kuna maana fiche, so that wewe mwenyewe ukishaambiwa, like in old days ulikuwa unapata wazee wanakukalisha, wakisha kukalisha wanakupa hadithi. So ukishapewa hadithi, wewe mwenyewe ukishatoka mahali pale, you start, unaanza kutafuna, unaanza kujiwazia, mbona wakaniambia hii, mbona wakaniambia. So ukishafika mahali, you come up with a solution on how you should live. So that is what Jesus tried to do, ya kwamba he decided to teach in parables, so that watu wenyewe akisha waacha wanaanza kutafuna kwa ile mambo ambayo alikuwa ameongea, like the parable of the good Samaritan, ile ambayo tumepeana. So akipeana hiyo hadithi, mtu ataanza kujiwazia, huyu wa kwanza alipita, huyu wa pili akapita, lakini mwingine alimsaidia, na huyo ambaye alimsaidia hakuwa mtu wa kwao, alikuwa foreigner. So inamaanisha ya kwamba tuwe na moyo wa kusaidia. Haya, hii ingine, the parable of the prodigal son, inamaanisha, inafunza mambo mengi: msamaha, upendo. So ukipea mtu that parable, ataanza akiwa mtu ambaye anawaza vizuri. Utapata huyu mtu ya kwamba ata make a solution katika maisha yake. So I like to ask you that let us be able to understand the parables of Jesus, tuzisome in New Testament, so that we can understand what Jesus was trying to teach.